Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Safe House, brought to you by the Safe House Initiative. I'm Jeff Edwards, co chair of the Safe House Initiative, and your host for today's podcast. Welcome back to the Safe House Cyber Insurance Summer Series. Last week, my series co host, Tawana Johnson, and I had an enlightening conversation with Stephen Schwartz about identifying, quantifying risk, and ways to get a handle on it. It was a great conversation. All right, so Tawana,
Yes.
what do you have in store for us today?
Well, today we are going to be speaking with Ryan Mercer. He is the Vice President of Cyber and E&O with McGriff Brokerage. So, Ryan, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So, Ryan, can you just kind of start out by introducing yourself and telling us what you do with McGriff and cyber insurance?
Yeah, for sure. Thanks, Dwana. Like you said, my name's Ryan Mercer. I'm a vice president in our cyber and errors and emissions team within our executive risk advisors group at McGriff. Basically, what that means is I am an advisor in the placement of cyber insurance for our companies in the SMB space, all the way up to the Fortune 500, even like Fortune 50 space. I've been doing that for about a decade now. I used to work at another brokerage called Aon. That was about 5 years ago. I've been with McGriff for about 5 years now. I look forward to kind of walking through a lot of the risks and trends in the cyber insurance world with you all.
Fantastic. So, can you just kind of give us a little bit of background? How did you get started in the cyber insurance space?
Yeah, for sure. I think, like many insurance expert, you sort of fall into this industry. I started, like I said, with a company called Aon. I had an internship with them in college as an account manager, which is a very much an insurance generalist. I didn't have any other job offers coming out of college, but I had one from Aon. And that sent me up to Chicago. And after about a year and a half of working in that sort of property and casualty generalist role, there was an opportunity on their cyber insurance team, brokerage team in that office, which I raised my hand. It was sort of a new insurance product that was back in like 2016, 2017. Cyber insurance had been around for a while, but it certainly didn't have the uptake that it has today in 2025. So that was a great opportunity to sort of learn the product and learn the marketplace for cyber insurance. And I've been in it ever since, and have sort of focused my entire insurance brokerage career around the cyber insurance product.
That is, as you said, a lot of people fall into it by accident. And, I hear all the time that's exactly how people get into it and they end up sticking with it. So, I think your story is pretty typical for our industry for sure. So, Ryan, one of the things that spurred on this podcast series was one of our Safe House Initiative co-chairs was telling a story about when he was getting his insurance renewed. He owns a tech company, and his broker just offhandedly said, "Hey, there's also this cyber insurance. You probably don't need it, but it's here if you want it." And that just, when he told me that story, my jaw just kind of hit the floor. And I'd also heard before some statistics that, there's pretty low uptake on cyber insurance, somewhere between like 4 and 8% or something ridiculously low, like that. From your perspective, why do you think SMBs may be hesitant to purchase cyber insurance?
Sure. There are a lot of different reasons. I think maybe to start with the example you gave of, a broker saying, you may not really need this. I think there's about 40,000 property casualty brokers in the US. Um, the percentage of those that have cyber insurance expertise is probably very, very small. Um, I think when you're selling an insurance product that you're not very comfortable with, you may sort of lean on the side of, or you may not focus on it as much as you would insurance products that you have more familiarity with, which most brokers would say that's property and casualty insurance, I think. So there may be some discomfort on the broker side trying to sell or make representations about an insurance product that they don't have like a lot of intimacy with. So I think that's potentially one cause. Cyber insurance is a very young product. I said, I got into this industry in 2017 and the market was very different than it is today. The market as a whole is probably only about 25 years old. And really, I think the first 10 to 15 years are sort of negligible. The market was, much, much smaller. I think from 2015 to 2020, there was a lot more uptake. And then from today, the market's about 3 times the size it was in 2017. So all that's to say, it's a newer insurance product relative to the property and casualty insurance lines that have been around for much, much longer. I think the cost historically has been a little bit of a barrier to purchasing the insurance product. I think it's definitely way better today than it was like 10 years ago. But it wasn't uncommon to go to a small business and say, hey, would you like this $1 million cyber policy? It's going to cost you, $10,000-$15,000. Any small business is going to say, well, absolutely not. We're not paying that kind of money. I don't care how risky you think this is. This just doesn't work within our P&L right now to purchase that.
Mm-hmm.
Today that's way, way better. But if you look at like, why is there such low percentage uptake? It hasn't been cheap for 10 years, right? It's been cheap for a couple of years. And I think that percentage will improve. But I think that those are some of the reasons that explain why there's low uptake in that space.
Yeah, I think all of that makes sense. What do you think a broker can do to better address those concerns? How do we educate brokers? The fact that this broker was talking to a man who owns a tech company and saying he probably didn't need cyber insurance. That's a bit of an issue there, right? How do you think we get over that hurdle of education and helping brokers to, better address concerns from SMBs?
Yeah, I think it's going to take some education about what the policy covers, about how the claims process works. I think that education needs to come from the brokers themselves. I think those insurance brokers should probably seek out expertise in those spaces. That can come from, in the small business space, very common that expertise comes from like a wholesale broker. So I think having retail brokers partner with wholesalers for that sort of education. And a lot of times the wholesaler can kind of step in front of the client to educate the client on that product. I think on the carrier side, more education for brokers as well. And I say that understanding, I think the carriers have done a lot to educate the brokerage community on their cyber insurance policies. But continuing to do that, I think would raise the like cyber IQ of the P&C industry.
So, Ryan, I want to talk now about the application process for cyber insurance. Is that something that a broker would typically help an SMB to complete?
Yes, and I think this kind of goes back to that brokers having an understanding and a grasp of like the cyber insurance product and the renewal process is important. In the same way that they would be familiar with the information you need to collect for property insurance, for casualty insurance, I think they need to be familiar with the information you need to collect for cyber insurance. For SMBs, that means the broker having sort of a basic understanding of the minimum security controls that a company needs to have in place to purchase the insurance. It's not a long list, but kind of understanding what those things are, why they're important, can help, I think, a buyer, a potential insurance buyer, If they're not doing those things, understand why they need to do those things. So really just educating themselves around what's important to the underwriters. Ultimately, that can get our clients, our potential clients, into a position where they're able to actually receive quotes from the insurance marketplace.
I've heard folks talk about how insurance applications have changed over even just the last 5 years. Way back, again, 5, 10 years ago, the insurance application may have been just one page front and back. But now we're seeing a much more detailed application. And I've even seen some carriers that have their own threat intelligence team who will go out and actually try to do penetration testing on applicants and their networks. Do you have any thoughts on what has triggered that change, or if that's something that's consistent across all carriers? What are your thoughts there on the application?
Yeah. Well, this is like a little tongue in cheek to say, but before 2020, we didn't do much underwriting in cyber insurance. I mean, some carriers did, but I'd say that the greater industry was very comfortable with they loved asking the questions. Those questions weren't exactly instrumental in their underwriting decisions, i.e., like whether or not they said yes or no to insuring a risk. And in 2019, 2020, kind of on the heels of COVID, and due to a lot of different factors, which I don't know if we want to get into that or not, but sort of turned the marketplace upside down. And that hard market environment sort of forced carriers to reassess what was important from an underwriting perspective, and that's where a lot of these applications came from. A lot of them are really lengthy. I think if you put yourself in the carrier's shoes, though, it's different strokes for different folks.
Mm-hmm.
Smaller companies don't need the same level of security controls in most cases that a Fortune 500 company needs to be able to purchase cyber insurance. And I think you'll find if you're working with brokers that have a lot of experience in the cyber insurance space, you'll find that a lot of them have put together insurance applications for small businesses that are much, much lighter in the questions that they ask than what you may see from like a carrier standard application that they would share with you. And the reality is, for small businesses, like I was saying earlier, there's really only a couple things you need to be doing to fully access the cyber insurance marketplace. And the last thing I'll say on that is there's been a lot of evolution on the carrier side in the last couple of years, where a lot of investments have been made into automated underwriting techniques. So a lot of companies, especially in managing general agents, companies like Coalition and AppBay and Corvus and Cowbell and tons of others that I can't name them all, but a lot of them just go through sort of a digital underwriting process where they'll scan the company's network, look for potential vulnerabilities, and use that as basically the entire underwriting process. And provided the company's scan sort of comes back, quote unquote, clean, they're able to produce a quote, or they have a couple questions and then they're able to produce a quote. So a much, much laxer underwriting process than what you would see larger, more complex companies go through.
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that part before. Yeah. Cool. So, that leads right into my next question. So, obviously talking about, like you were just saying, some of the MGAs or insurtech companies have that automated application process. What other steps do you think brokers can take to simplify that application process?
So I think brokers that understand the cyber insurance marketplace can look at a client's application and quickly tell them whether or not there's going to be issues approaching the insurance marketplace based on the answers. Being able to front run some of those answers with clients or prospective clients, I think is an important service that the broker can provide. At just a quick example, you get an application back and the let's say the company does like 50 million in revenue a year, but doesn't have any sort of endpoint detection or response product deployed and doesn't have multi-factor authentication for email access. Most brokers in the cyber insurance space would know that's going to lead to a lot of difficulty getting competitive cyber insurance terms. And we want smaller companies to buy the product, right? So I don't want to come back to a client and say, hey, I can get you a $1 million limit, but it's going to cost $50,000, and you're going to have a $100,000 deductible and co-insurance, right? Much better to go back to the company and say, hey, you can probably turn on MFA for your email solution with just a couple clicks. And I've got some vendors I can recommend you to for an endpoint detection response product that I think you'll be able to get something deployed for an economical price. Let's do that before we look at insurance. And I think you'll be looking at insurance terms that look much more competitive. So I think this all comes back to that same, just reiterating education on the brokerage side is important. But doing those types of things can lead to a much more positive cyber insurance experience, I think, than maybe a lot of companies have had in the past.
Yeah, I think that actually sounds very helpful. I think I know I've had a lot of clients who would have been grateful to have had that kind of advice prior to getting insurance or cyber insurance.
Hey, Tawana, can I ask Ryan a question?
Yeah, of course, Jeff.
Yeah. Hey, Ryan, I love the time horizon that you've been in the business, because you've seen a lot of change. It's a young industry of 25 plus years, as you pointed out earlier, but in the time frame you've been in it, it has transitioned dramatically, pre-COVID and then during COVID and now currently. So from very few questions or requirements to a lot more questions or requirements, as Tawana pointed out, even to having, the technical aspects of really getting in there before you get a policy. Are you finding that brokers are becoming more consultative in nature, or are required to become more consultative in nature in terms of where to invest monies in the controls? Does that question make any sense to you, Ryan?
Yeah. No, that's a very good question. And I'm somewhat passionate about the answer to that. I think the answer is yes, to an extent. I think you should have, it's kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier, which is I understand what the underwriters feel are the most important things that a company should be doing from a cybersecurity perspective. Making sure our clients understand that and understand that the carriers care about that because it obviously prevents financial loss. So understanding that and sort of leveraging that knowledge to our clients so that they can make informed decisions from a cybersecurity perspective, I think is a very important part of the broker's role. I also think it's important to know where my role ends, right? I think, as involved as I am in sort of cybersecurity, I am not a CISO, right? I'm not a CTO. I don't live in that world. I live in the insurance world. And I think it's important at times to understand that those folks probably know better than the brokers do at some point eventually. So, and not just the client side, but also on the vendor side as well. I mean, there's a lot of very sophisticated, well thought of firms out there relying on their expertise and sort of deferring to them when those questions come up from clients. I think it's important to know where when to sort of pass the buck off to the next person. So,
yeah. Thanks, Ryan. Hey, Tawana, I'm sorry to interrupt, but any other questions from you, Tawana? Because I always like to get the last word in. You know me.
I do know you. Go right ahead, Jeff.
So, Ryan, we always ask our guests, if there's one thing that our audience could do today, actionable, what would you recommend them to do?
Yeah, I'm going to go into sort of the claims side of things, which is notice. So if you have a cyber incident, one, I hope you've purchased cyber insurance, but two, I really hope that when that thing happens, you call your insurance broker. If you don't call them first, call them second, and that you've sort of prearranged your incident response providers. I'm a part of cyber claims on it feels like almost a daily basis. And I would say that is the number one thing that continues to give clients heartburn in the sort of claims adjustment process, which is not keeping your broker and your insurance company informed, throughout the cyber incident response process. So doing the pre-work, understanding who you're going to call, from a breach counsel perspective and from a forensics perspective, sharing that information with your broker so we can communicate that to the insurance carriers. Doing all of that stuff just leads to a much smoother process when a cyber incident does actually occur, and leads to much better recovery on the back end from your insurance carriers as well.
I tell you what, Ryan, and Tawana, what a great guest that you had for us today. Thank you, Tawana, for that. And Ryan, thank you so much for your contribution to the Safe House. You're going to help a lot of people get some clarity and understanding, and hopefully they'll engage and start and bring on some cyber insurance into their overall risk management portfolio.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to join, and glad to be a part of it.
Hey, great. Hey, Tawana. So
Yes.
we started this whole series with you talking about the breach coach and the role that you play. And then we had Stephen Schwartz on, as we said earlier, and he talked about the risk world and how to get hands around it so you know where to go. And then now we've talked to a broker. So where do we go next on our adventure next week?
Well, Jeff, next week we'll be talking with Heather Monjo. She is the Vice President and Director of Cyber Product Solutions at Allied World, and she's going to be talking to us about the underwriting process.
Well, that's going to be extremely interesting. So looking forward to that.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, till next week. That's our podcast for today. I'm Jeff Edwards for the Safe House Initiative. Thanks for joining us, and remember, be safe, be resilient, and be kind to each other. For more information about the Safe House Initiative, please use your mobile device to scan the QR code on the screen, or send us an email at info@safehouseinitiative.org, or visit us on our website, safehouseinitiative.org. We look forward to hearing from you.